Hello, Izzy.
Hello, Mike.
Welcome to AuroraCast. Finally,
It's nice to be here.
thanks for joining me on the Christmas Eve. This is I suppose in peace times we might have been in the pub having a Christmas tipple before Christmas
Absolutely.
starts, but this is the best we've
Absolutely.
got. I'll give you a virtual coffee
I mean,
thing.
I've got water. I drank coffee already, so
You're just ahead of me. You're just ahead of me slightly. So, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm enjoying this time. Bit of peace, as it has probably been most of the year, but this is nice. I feel this is nicer now.
It's a bit. I think we were saying that for us in the day job, we know that we're off for a month, so it's time to get focused.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Izzy is a graphic designer living in Surrey, who has recently graduated from Kingston. Is responsible for making my YouTube channel look like less sort of like shit because I just could not sort it out at all with the banners. So thank you very much for doing something that was probably relatively easy for you, but a pain in the arse for me.
I think it probably helped 3 years of uni.
Yeah, it's kind of something, isn't it? It's kind of definitely something. Did you kind of want to add anything that I mean, I've said you are a graphic designer, which I gather that is essentially what you're going to be by trade. Did you have any kind of other thing you wanted to add to that as an introduction?
I think you've summed it up quite nicely, Mike.
Okay, good. Because sometimes I like some people are like, but I do all these other things as well. But graphic design, I suppose, seems to be your home.
Yeah.
So that's good, right? So I mean, when did this? Do you remember a point where you thought, you know what, this is kind of like, where did this all start for you? When did this become a thing?
Looking back, I think to me, it suddenly seems very obvious. But when I was growing up, I wouldn't say it was obvious at all. I would be like, oh, I just like drawing. And I was certainly encouraged from different teachers over the years, like keep drawing. And then it got to secondary school, and we had a graphic design term in tech in year 9. And funny enough, I've got it here with me. The first project was create a CD album.
Amazing.
And loads of people just copied whatever album artwork that was out at the time. I think it was some sort of might be like an Eminem album that came out then, and that was what everyone was doing. And I was like, no, I want to design everything from scratch. So that was, I must have been like 13 at the time. And then I just carried on just sort of drawing and not really thinking about it. And it wasn't really until I'd got into foundation after sixth form, which is like a nice diagnostic year at art school where you sort of work out what you want to do. And if you'd asked me in high school, I would have said, I'm going to be an architect. I want to build buildings. Then it got to the pathway in it's called 3D, and that's where I did architecture in foundation, and I didn't like it.
Okay.
So that was the moment I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then the next week it was graphic design, and I was like, oh, this is the part I like. But it was certainly something which I'm sure my technology teachers at GCSE would be like, it was obvious. It just wasn't to me.
It's strange, isn't it? Sometimes it's like until you've actually gone and sort of done something and you sit there doing it in like almost a bit of a formal way. You're like, actually, this isn't for me at all.
It was quite a shock.
It's weird. So it's I suppose it's kind of, I do like the fact that the school, kind of, we've spoken about this before. I like the fact that you say that you definitely feel that there was like a school element that pushed you, and the teachers kind of like, because I find sometimes now, I think from talking to teachers, they're sort of so busy, unfortunately, and so many kids in there and so much going on, so much paperwork. It's like, I'm glad that I'd hope that would always remain, in schools, like a way to kind of like, this person's going to be good at this, or this person's kind of got this flair, let's push them in that way as well. Would you say this is kind of on topic, because I know your sister's very creative as well?
Yeah.
Was there kind of like, are you two almost like the are you two like the first generation of creatives in the Swan family, or would you say that there's something in your family there as well that kind of pushed you?
We're the first generation that are actively trying to break into the industry, but I would say my mum's very artistic. She's done a whole range of things. She's more like she's done a load of illustration when we were younger, like show us what we were doing kind of thing. She's very practical as well. So stuff like even the curtains and blinds in the house, my mum's done. And my gran was really into drawings as well when she was younger. So there's always been this bit of it, but not actively like pursued as a career, which I know my mum finds very exciting. My dad's quite proud of that because he's a computer programmer. So he's a bit like, it looks great. It looks really good.
Love it.
So, everyone's very supportive, which is very nice because I know it's not the case for everyone who's sort of creative. There's I think some people have a bit of a
get a proper job sort of attitude.
Yeah. Whereas my parents like, go for it. That's what you enjoy. Like, life's for living, do something that's going to make you happy. So I'm quite lucky in that sense.
That's great. I must admit, I was looking at your kind of like your setting, and I thought, this looks very well put together. This looks I like it. So I suppose it's kind of because one thing I was going to ask you about Adobe, but I might move that like to a little bit later on because I'm always fascinated by how people. So you kind of answered the question in that you started definitely with the pen, like and paper. That was your kind of like and applying it to a product as well, like you did with a CD, which you've got, which is cool. I'm kind of fascinated whenever I'm talking to anyone who's in like does like illustration or paints or draws or anything like this, and then you've got the digital element of it as well.
Yeah.
How do you kind of how do you find that? Like, do you find that you tend to are you drawn now like with going to kind of digital, or are there some projects that you're like, no, I need to get like the pen and paper out?
I would say pretty much most of my projects I've ever done, I've always started by drawing. I've got so many like sketch pads lying around. So recently it's been watching documentaries and I just like sketch. I don't know, you can see it very well. Just do random drawings or whatever. But like I would then move it more digitally now because I'm still trying to get my head around it, shall we say. So most things start with a rough drawing, a rough idea, and then it's trying to like filter it through digitally. That sort of makes sense.
Sure.
So because I didn't really it's probably answering that question a bit about Adobe. I didn't really get my head around it till 4, maybe 5 years ago. So everything from the beginning. So even this project that started off with a little drawing on a pad, and then showing my teacher. I remember my teacher, Mr. Cope, went, "Is when you get your head around Photoshop, when you get your head around this, you're gonna love it. But in the meantime, use Paint." So
Brilliant.
Paint was an absolute headache, but it definitely gave me appreciation of the brilliance that is like Photoshop. But yeah, so I would say most things I've got a big appreciation for starting by hand and then trying to move it up to digital. I think probably the best.
I think I loved Paint. I think we all loved Paint. I think it was like it was I suppose I click this thing and it makes all this stuff and I can rub it out, but it's kind of I think it is weird because when I was talking to a chap called Christoph Speidel, who's a logo designer, and he's like old school. He's like pen and paper. He doesn't. I'm surprised he's even got a computer. But then he has to have a whole team to like vectorize everything for him because obviously the bands need their logos in vectors because that's the world we live in. But I find it. I've always been fascinated by like graphics tablets and things like that. And I know that obviously with Apple and the iPad, they've got the Apple Pencil and things like that. Is there like I suppose the reason I'm asking this, right, is because let's say I'm trying to write like a journal. Like something, I'm trying to write. I'm trying to get, because I'm like this. I'll get up in the night and I just can't sleep, and I'm like, I got all these things like firing around my brain box because I'm clearly mental, and I have to. I sometimes have to, like, someone said to me once, just get a pen and paper and just write until you can't write anymore. Just keep writing. And I tried doing it on my phone, which was of course counterproductive, because then you got all the blue light and whatever else you're then on your phone, and the phone's, you know, within 10 minutes you're on bloody Facebook.
Yeah.
But like, I've always found that if there's like a to-do list, or if I'm writing a track and I'm trying to like remember a chord progression, or I'm trying to make notes, I grab a pen and paper.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know. And I've asked this question to so many people, because it's like, I kind of want that Apple Pencil world to take off, because I think it's cool being a bit of a techie guy, but I just can't. Like, whenever I've tried to write on the screen, it kind of just doesn't feel right. Is it just me being mental, or is there any sort of truth to this, like what I'm talking about at all?
No, I'm sorry. It took me a long time to get my head around the Apple Pencil and the iPad, because I only got it a few years ago. And initially I was so excited. And then when you start trying to do anything with it, it's a bit like, this doesn't feel right. So I'd say it's sort of a bit of like persistence to get your head around it again, because it's not the same as holding a pen and having a nice bit of paper, and there's a texture to the paper, and it depends what pen you picked up, depends how your writing seems to write, you know, if it's neat or scruffy. So it took a long time to sort of get your head around the difference. But I did see the other day, someone was saying that apparently you can get like a sheet to go on top of your iPad, and it makes it feel like you're writing on paper.
Okay, that's cool.
I could understand why people might be interested in that.
Okay.
But it's definitely something where even I would just go to grab a bit of pen and paper, and I'd rather write on that for like a to-do list, or initial ideas, because I don't know, it feels like an easier release from your brain to the paper.
No, I think that's what it is, though. I think there's basically a connection that we've obviously built up through generations of sort of evolution. That, you know, and obviously if you press down hard, you know, and if you're shading, or you get like you get a response, a physical response back from the page.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know whether the screens in the future are going to have some sort of like resistance against them. If you press harder, it like pushes, you know, has a go at you, sort of thing. I like that idea of putting the page over the iPad, because it might kind of, I don't know. I suppose it's almost like you can go for the. I suppose in a way, if you did that, I don't know how you'd actually keep this artificial bit of paper over the pad. But I suppose you could almost forget, because I know now that, like, with the whole screen sharing thing, which I gather you do, we will come on to your Adobe setup. But I gather it's almost like you could probably draw something in that with under that guise and not even look at the screen. Kind of thing. Like if it's going into Photoshop or whatever his program is you're using, it's like, oh, okay, there's my stuff, you know. Okay, cool. Now let's jump into it. So I suppose it's just a weird one for me in terms of like, I think maybe I'm just old, you know. Maybe the new generations, you know, who, you know, my brother grew up doing his homework lying in bed on an iPad. I couldn't envision that. I have to sit at a table to do work. So perhaps I don't know. I'm going to buy one. I think, not that I do any drawing, but it just be interesting to see if I could actually take notes properly on an iPad and see how it works in that capacity. How does it feel?
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
I think it's something you've got to really just be persistent to break through, to begin to like it, to get that same kind of effect. After a lot
I will like this. I love it.
know,
I love it.
It's that drive to be like, I've got to get my head around this now.
See, I'm forcing myself to use this newfangled bit of tech.
Yeah.
Now, I'm hiding all my pens. I'm hiding all my notepads. Talking of pens, do you have almost like, if you are doing something like to page, like it sounds like you're trying to bridge, like you're trying to get yourself into this digital sphere. But if you do, like right now, I'm going to come on to talk about your other Instagram as well. Like we're jumping around these things. Like if you are thinking, say, like, you know, I want a day away from my tech, I want to do an old school drawing. Do you have like go-to like pens and pencils and different markers and things like that you sort of Izzy's go-to stuff?
I have 3 packs of these ready on the side, untouched, and they're essentially fine liners.
Okay.
Different types, so like fine liner, brush pen, different thicknesses, These are just my absolute favourite. Sort of stemming from A-level fine art that I did for 2 years. But those are my go-to, like, straight away. Like, they've got, it's that really nice feeling on the paper when you draw. You just get really nice, like, smooth lines. For me anyway, not for everyone. Some of my friends used to absolutely curse the days where you have to use the fine liners, and I'd be the one in the class going, brilliant, I'm happy.
We're using my favourite pens.
Yeah, that or biros. At one point, it was a big thing, was just using biros, which is a lot cheaper. But then you sort of get...
I don't know, because I always used to press like too hard with a biro. My hand would start bloody hurting, you know. And I was always like, I can't remember where we were now, but someone took the piss out of me, or I was saying that, you know, my fountain pens, you know, like I liked my fountain pens and like ink ball.
They're good.
Like, but yeah, I like those. Yeah, I like that. So you've got all the pens. See, I knew this because I saw on your it is design. No, it's art__swan, isn't it, on Instagram? I saw you drew like a bunch of pens, and
yeah,
that's my cognition into asking you that question. I'm like, I know Izzy's got some pens kicking around her place, basically, because she's drawn these things.
They're all within arm's reach, all the different ones that I need and like.
So I love it. You gotta have your tools. You gotta have your tools in place. So okay. So coming back to the Adobe thing, then when did so basically it sounds like it was always like, Izzy, when you get Photoshop, Izzy, when you get this. So in your brain, it's like, well, I've got to get this thing, right?
Yeah.
So how did that? When did you first? What you say is about 4 years you've been using it. Did you get it before that?
So I got it just as I started my foundation diploma in art design. So finished sixth form, and then it was everyone, whoever sort of comes to school and be like, when you go to foundation, just go buy Adobe Suite and just learn it in your own time. So I waited until the end of summer to try and keep the finance down. And then once I started to be like, oh, I can do this, and oh, I can do that. This is amazing. My bank account's never been the same since, but I've been a lot happier.
I think they know this. These people, these creative people, will spend lots of money with us. I think there's some secret thing about, like, if we're going to get them hooked on this, you know, start at £20 a month, or you're probably paying next to nothing while she was studying. It's going to go probably to about £1,000 a day or something.
It probably will be, but no, it was certainly an eye opener into a whole new world. Once I'd begin to get my head around it, again, that was something where I got it, and it's like you have to have this persistence and drive to crack it, as it were. And then once you get your head around one of the softwares, you sort of find that you can sort of work out the other ones a bit easier.
Transferable,
yeah.
It's one thing, I mean, because I've got Premiere. It's the only one I've got. Just for editing, basically just for AuroraCast, and that's basically why I got it. But it does seem to me like my flatmate is a motion graphics designer, and he'll jump into like After Effects, then he's in Photoshop, then he's into Audition to do some audio stuff. Like I pop in there sometimes just to, like, you know, talk rubbish and have a look at what's going on, and I'm like, this is crazy that this company have literally made all this software that sort of like is interoperable and just talks to each other, and it's all these things are transferable. And I love that you could kind of this is one thing I was going to ask you as well. I love that you could sort of start a project. I suppose the example I'm using is more from like a video element, but I've seen people, like, when they're editing films, where they'll have one sequence which they need to sort of do some After Effects on, and you can actually compile a segment into After Effects, do the work that you need to do.
Yeah.
And it kind of bounces it back into, renders it, bounce is an audio word, render, I should be saying, renders it back into Premiere, and it's not using any CPU, but you can jump back into After Effects from that set. It's just like, it's just incredible. They've done what they've done there, and it's got to be said, like, from using Premiere, the audio tools are outstanding. Like, from an audio guy, I'm like, wow. So Adobe's got the thumbs up. Do you find that, because obviously when when I got you to give me a hand with some stuff for AEPL, I noticed that you were using sort of some Illustrator files and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you tend to jump? Do you jump between them, kind of thing, or do you have like what's your workflow? I suppose.
I suppose because Photoshop was the first I got my head round, that's more like my default. But through my degree, and it was just the sheer like you just threw yourself into everything and anything, and you learned a bit of everything. I've now sort of twisted, like jumped around, and it sort of depends what the outcome of the project is going to be. Really, sort of informs what you're using or what sort of way you use it. Because I might start in Photoshop knowing that the file has to end up vectorized, so it has to be an Illustrator, and then you sort of, I don't know, I sort of jump around a bit more, probably maybe more than other people, but because there's certain elements I know better in Photoshop than Illustrator or After Effects, whatever it is, like you end up just sort of, for me, I just go around until I get the outcome I want. So it can be a bit of a headache, but it's a headache that I like.
Well, it's good to have the option. It's good to have the option, and I think it's like the suite definitely offers everything. I mean, you could really do even do audio in it. Audition seems relatively comprehensive. So did you kind of for me, when it came to kind of learning Logic and Pro Tools, obviously I went to uni and we kind of covered it, but it was like basically we all sort of learnt it ourselves really by doing it.
Yeah.
Did you was that the same for you?
Yeah, you got a great big swimming pool, and you got the deep end, and they just sort of lob you in, sink or swim. That's it, off you go. That's sort of how I feel it sort of went.
But good luck to you.
It was. I suppose most things though, it's just been like, off you go. Just if you want to learn it, it's down to you. But I suppose it's almost part of the fun. Like it's I don't know about you, but it's like when you work out how you're going to get something. You got the picture in your head, whatever it is, and you're like, how am I going to translate this? And then once you've cracked it, it's just, I don't know, I just felt like the best feeling in the world.
It's weird, right? Because it's like, I'm about to go a bit tinfoil hat with this, but it's, there's this kind of, there's this thing with creatives and art where you've kind of got this like, I don't know if you ever, have you ever done some work like, and you get to the finish point and then you're looking at what you've done and you're sort of like, I don't actually quite know how I got here or remember the steps that I took. It's like, I feel like I've been possessed or something while I've done this kind of work. I get that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's like that kind of, like you said, you've got this idea and then you end up in this sort of like chaos. How am I going to do this? Like, I don't see how this is possible. And I think you end up in that beautiful place between like chaos and order.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. And then you just lock in, don't you? You're just sort of like, you're gone for hours.
Yeah.
Just doing this work. And then you kind of come out the other side and you're sort of like, well, you know, how's this manifested itself kind of thing? Do you get that? Is that a thing that, or am I just sort of like talking nonsense?
I completely get. I think it'd be fair to say like pretty much most projects I've ever done is that moment where you sort of go, you like look at it and you're like, how did I get what happened to get here? I know very little sleep happened. I know a lot of coffee happened. And I know a lot of work went into this, but I just don't know how.
I actually arrived at this finish line. It's crazy, isn't it?
It certainly happened for like my uni hand-ins, apart from the third one. First and second year, where it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've been awake since like 5, but I only had like an hour's sleep. And you're sort of a bit like, all right, the box is on the table, I'm out. Oh my God, I don't know how that happened.
There's the other thing as well, isn't there? There's when I was at uni, I gather, and I could be wrong. I'm gathering with your written work and your kind of like your any analysis you had to do and things like that. You had it done early and quick, but anything the creative, you've just said you're up late.
I would say a lot of it, you'd have a certain amount done. You'd have a project done in time for the initial deadline, but by the time it came to the end of the year where you could work on it and improve it, but obviously as a creative, you keep growing and learning and bringing in more stuff, that you then look back at a project you did at the start of the year and you go, oh my God, I can't hand this in as it is. I've got to work on it more. And I'm always someone who I'm like, well, that's my deadline. I'm going to work right to the end because I can keep improving it right to the end. But then sometimes it does mean that end of year hand-ins, you'd be a bit like, oh, okay, maybe I should have been a bit more organised. But I don't know. That's just me being someone who like, well, I've worked better. I know more. I can do more. I'm gonna work on it a bit more.
No, I think I'm the same, and I have people on my course, you know, and they phone me and say, "Oh, how are you getting on with X project?" It's like, what do you mean? I haven't even started it. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still dreaming about it. I'm still having nightmares about it. They're like, "Oh, I've almost finished it," and I'm like, "What?" You know, like, and it's kind of. I mean, I was working like throughout uni. I wasn't in halls or anything. I was in my own private rented flat, which was fun. But like, it is. I'm like that. It's all. When I've worked on projects before, where you're collaborating with someone, and they're almost like, you know, you start at like 9 a.m. and it's like 9 at night. You know, and I'm still moving faders, and they're like, "All right, Mike, I'm going to be going now." I'm like, "What do you mean, mate? We've got at least another 6 hours before the deadline," kind of thing. And they're like, "Well, you go for it. I'm going home." And sometimes it's like, your health is important. You do need to like, you know, are you still like that on projects?
At the moment, I think where this is the good thing about sort of being off from the day job. It's a bit like, oh, okay, I've now got the weekend that I can use. So I suppose currently it's a bit more. I'm trying to get more like routine about it, so I'm not staying up till whatever time in the morning, so I get some sleep, which is still something I'm trying to get my head around. It's more like I'll stay up really late and then I'll wake up late and then I'm a bit groggy for a bit of the day and then I'm up and functioning, working really late again. But I mean, I think it's just a case of just wanting to just make sure, like, I don't know about you, but I have times I'm like, I really feel like I'm going to be productive, I'm in the right mindset, and I've got all these ideas and I need to just get them out. And then sometimes you have days where I'm a bit like, I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not getting that creative.
Receiving.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen today, or so you end up doing something else. But sort of normally, I don't really have a routine. It's just be creative as and when you can. Whereas now I'm a bit more like, oh, I can try and practice what it'd be like if I was a creative full time, as it were. Which, I mean, I feel like I always have been, but
it's interesting as well, I think, when you do that, because I suppose when you kind of like, I found this when I first did my first kind of like paid gig, if you want. It was a mixing job, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's going to take probably about 3 days, and you know, okay, so I'll start at 9 and I'll finish at 6. I'll treat it like a normal job, and I sort of charge the client based for like sort of 3 days work based on what I thought. You know, and I ended up doing like 3 times the amount of work that I actually budgeted for. So I suppose it's like, it is a steep learning curve in that respect. It's like if you, because you got to think about it, right? Like, this is one thing I think they don't prep you for at uni, across the board, really, unless well, I don't think they prep you for it at all, especially in the creative arts. But it's like, you do need a bit of structure to your life, and I think while creatives are a little bit sort of batshit in terms of like, we probably, a lot of us probably do wake up at 3 a.m. and suddenly have an idea and start working, like, and you're like, you know, everyone around you is like, hello, like, we're supposed to be going to a thing at 10, and you're like, oh, sorry, I did this idea. But they don't teach you this, like, this way of trying to structure that, that might, you know, that way of working. And I don't think you can put like a time frame on creativity. It's very difficult to do, to monetize your time as a creative. So, but you do need to establish a balance. So it'll be interesting. Now you've said that, it'll be interesting catching up with you like at the end of January. Like, did you manage to like start at one point, finish at another, see your family, actually eat and sleep consistently?
And I suspect the answer will probably be no. I'm like, I tried for a couple of days, but it just wasn't working. So I went back to doing what I normally do.
It's tricky. It is tricky, and it's because it's something for you as well. It's the only thing you create is like it's like an extension of you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you kind of like, you just end up constantly on it. But it's an interesting thing, and this leads me back This leads me back, because obviously we've established that you're a graphic designer. We've established you like to draw, and that your digital art on your Art Swan account, which I've loved, by the way. I saw you did a Back to the Future.
I had a little bit more time again recently, and I was like, I'm finishing this one off.
So this is my question, I suppose. Is your kind of like, while it's all linked, would you say your Art Swan is more like your kind of downtime, I feel like drawing?
Yeah, 100%. That's more like sometimes in the evening, when I'm trying to sort of wind down, partly due to the persistence of trying to get my head around the Apple Pencil and using that, I'll have my laptop on, I'm watching a film, but then I've got my iPad as well, and I'm trying to desperately create something. And then normally I sort of wake myself up and I'm finishing off the drawing at some ridiculous time. Or sometimes it takes a few sittings, like a few films, and I'm watching watch Back to the Future at the cinema. Then I come back home, I'm like, I really want to draw this and that. And then I'll do that, and I'm watching some other film, and I'm going, I want to draw that now as well. But it's more of it's a nightly evening routine to try and relax and then go to sleep.
Makes sense.
But it's certainly more of it doesn't require much thinking for me anyway to sort of do it. And it's certainly just a complete switch off. There's no timeline, there's no deadline, there's just until it's sort of to a point I'm happy it's sort of done. Sort of, it's just whatever point I'm happy with it, then we call it done.
It makes sense. Well, it's definitely going to be more relaxing than sort of binging another next Netflix series, which just keeps you awake and, yeah. So no, I think it's doing something like that it's all like for me recently it's been reading, because I kind of feel like sometimes, or playing the acoustic guitar, or like, getting away from this ridiculous rig that I sit in front of for far too much time in my life. And it's interesting as well on your on that kind of on your Art Swan profile. Like I made notes here where it's like obviously movie themes. There's insects. There's urban scenes. There's a lot of still life, buildings and sort of landscapes. And I could see you where you've been away, like in the Cotswolds, you've drawn.
Yeah.
And I liked that because it was taking that drawing it was taking like it had the easel and everything there as if the oldie worldy, but into the digital.
Yeah.
One thing I picked up on when kind of like canvassing your projects is I saw your project Space, Place and Pace.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting is because if you kind of if you look at sort of the stuff you've put up, I suppose, like for your kind of downtime, if you like, for your kind of like this is Izzy relaxing, and then you look at that project. There's a lot. I can see there's quite a lot of kind of like almost like people watching and observations of the world and sort of like taking things in from the world.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to psychoanalyze you here, but is there a link there, kind of thing, between those things?
I think again it sort of stems back from I was very fortunate at school. I had a really good art teacher for the majority of my time in secondary school, and she was someone that constantly preached about, are you observing everything? Take it in, look at this, look at that. And I was always great at drawing buildings. For the life of me, I just could not get my head around people. So I think I've always had a slight weird fascination of why can I capture a building, but I can't capture people? And so I would always say to everyone, like, if I was ever showing a sketchbook from school, I'd be like, skip past this part. We're not looking at these awful drawings I could not get my head around. And then very recently, I was like, I've got to try and get my head around, like, for my own personal benefit, I want to try and start working out why I can't do this. And then I had an opportunity for that project for Space, Place and Pace. It was looking at changes in an environment. So I ended up trying to draw people for a project, getting some really nice drawings, but it wasn't quite right for the outcome. And then suddenly I realised I was sitting on a train listening to all these different conversations. So the project became something very different about capturing interesting conversations on the train, you sort of sit there, you're suddenly going, what is going on in your life? So there's that sort of entertainment factor to it, I suppose, which has sort of begun to, as you pointed out, it sort of links into quite a lot of other stuff I've now done, which I hadn't necessarily realised until you'd said. So I found it quite interesting.
But there we go. Mike's kind of like, I don't know though, but you kind of, the very first thing you said, about you didn't realise at the time, these particular like interests. I think life's like that. People say you shouldn't look back, and you should sort of look forward and you should be present. But to me, these things are all linked, and you can't. If you don't look back, you don't know where you're going, and you're not grounded now. You're going like, well, what's going on? I mean, I'm not saying you got to completely focus on the future or constantly be nostalgic or look in the past, but I think it's useful to sometimes. Someone did it for me recently. They kind of canvassed like Aurora Eclipse, and they sent me this whole A4 sheet with like spider diagrams of like everything I've done and everything I'm doing. And I was absolutely like gobsmacked by it. I was like, wow, like, and there's me thinking I'm not doing anything. It's like, okay. Sometimes I think it helps. That's why I like with these interviews. It's like I learn stuff, you hopefully learn stuff. I feel like you work things out.
Yeah.
I thought that from seeing, because I think this was before you set up your Design Swan page, and I saw you drawn kind of like just people waiting for a bus. Or sort of someone standing. I couldn't find them. I don't know whether I got them on the wrong profile or you've taken them off, or this was about 2 years ago, I think.
That might be on my more sort of personal account a while ago.
Okay.
That's before I was like, maybe I should have a separate account a bit. So I've sort of got a bit of, I don't know, because it became very like, you got that problem where it's not really a problem, but you're like, maybe I should have a more sort of arts focused design and more personal kind of one. So it was probably about 2 years ago I made more of a conscious decision to split it up a bit. So some people,
I think it's a good idea, because I think if anyone is genuinely interested in you or genuinely interested, like to try and this is the other thing is genuine. People have got to be we need more genuine people in the world. But if someone's genuinely interested to hire you and you have got like a separate account that's perhaps slightly off, like say the graphic design, it will, like if I was hiring you, I would have done that research and I would have made that connection. So I think it's useful, and I could see that, and the space, place, and pace was interesting as well, because we've all been there. Everyone's sort of airing their dirty laundry for the entire world to hear on the train, or and I think you highlighted in the point as well. You'd almost put on in the work that like the train's now delayed, and the different things that the conductor was speaking, and how that then sets everybody off on a different path and changes their day.
Yeah.
It's an interesting project. I found it. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was cool, and I definitely saw the link there. Insects is a weird one.
That one I don't. It's one of those ones where you just feel like I just want to do that. Sort of no real rhyme or rhythm. I think I was trying to do something different. Is that like, can I do that? Am I able to? Can I make something cool out of it?
But I had this a few weeks ago. I sort of went into my front room and my flatmates there watching this like documentary on these like huge centipedes, and I'm sort of sitting there looking at them like, is everything okay with you, mate? Is the state of your mental health all right? Is everything like? He's like, well, they're interesting, aren't they? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to eat my meal here, and they're sort of like, what's it like, but they are, and I think it's like, I suppose it kind of makes sense because they're quite complex.
Yeah.
We don't think about, a lot of people think of insects as like, what are these horrible, creepy, crawly things? But when you actually kind of like, get your David Attenborough on and decide to like kind of like look into it, it's like, okay, there's a lot to these things. So I suppose it would make sense if you again observing and drawing. It's like I can do there's lots of intricate little things I can draw here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely. It's one of those things where just like, you wake up and you're like, I feel possessed that I need to do this. Don't really know why. I don't think there was anything that inspired it. maybe there was some sort of David Attenborough program on at the time where it was playing in my sleep. But
draw the insects.
just do it. Draw the insects, make them look good, and make something cool out of it.
I love it. All right, so I was lucky in that when I finally saw you at Costa, not sort of like 15 coffees in, looking slightly sort of wide-eyed and mental, trying to get things sort of finished. When you finally came in and sort of dropped your book down, for your kind of dissertation piece, which I found in. I was going to ask you about that because, okay, let's give some backdrop with it. I know that you want to get into your why are my notes like these? Notes look like my brain. They look like my brain. They really do. But yeah, publication design, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't find that. Knowing that you kind of want to get into publication design, I remember I came in and you were there at Costa looking sort of like more chilled than the previous sort of like 2-3 months of your life had been then. You sort of dropped it down and said, there's my finished sort of dissertation. And it was for me, it was really cool because you focused it obviously around film.
Yeah.
And you did a whole thing on film sound. And for me, that's like, as soon as anyone starts sort of talking about film sound, I'm like, receiving information, talk to me, I want some more information on this kind of thing. I wanted to ask kind of like, because I suppose this is almost 3 questions in this. There's been a theme throughout this whole conversation of film.
Yeah.
And we didn't touch on, obviously, on your design Swan. There's the Gentleman, there's Back to the Future, there's the Joker. There's another one as well, which just slipped my mind on there. Or maybe I've covered them all you've done so far.
That sounds like the majority of them.
So there's a movie kind of theme there. Then your dissertation, which was in an actual physical format, whereas mine was in some sort of ring binder that I just sort of chucked at my lecturer and said, "Give me there it is." You got to show that again because I want to see because it was a bit. I couldn't. So this is actually your finished dissertation. This is how you handed it in.
Yeah, how it would have been. We had to do, because of COVID, we didn't do a printed bound, spiral bound one to hand in. It was just all online. And then one of my tutors was like, we're going to do, you've got to design this. You've got to make it an actual physical thing or something which is a fair representation of your dissertation. And because, mine's all about sort of the cinema and that sort of scape, like how sitting within a screen with a collective audience sort of impacts how you sort of watch and listen to a film, how you'll take it in. So it was actually quite good fun because it ended up being about the dissertation. I had loads of different themes and it was all about film and how do we take in film, how has it changed over the course of time. And there's a really great moment where me and Charlotte work at a cinema. My older cousin worked at cinema, and then I found out my gran worked at a cinema. So it's this great sort of link that I could use. So I ended up doing it. It's all about sort of through 3 interviews. So this is basically the dialogue that I had with all different people about working at cinema. And then we got the main thing, which was the actual dissertation. But it was really good fun because it was so interesting about how, as humans, we benefit from seeing each other, having that weird contact that we're not allowed to have currently. Sorry to bring that one up. See you rolling your eyes. So it was a great piece that, as someone who doesn't naturally enjoy writing, it was quite good fun. So, I think it's an experience going to the cinema in itself. It's this great, there's a bit of a routine, but it's not a routine. It's almost like a ritual of going. You've got your planned time, you're going to go watch it. It's something that you're invested in going to watch. And going somewhere where you've got it massive, it can be slightly overwhelming sometimes, but it's this just complete, your almost undivided attention on what you're watching, apart from the other people that are in that screen you're sharing with, is quite good fun. So the whole design about this became then about highlighting, I know you can see that, highlighting the different,
can see it there, yeah.
Sort of people talking. So where I've used the interviews to sort of make my point, it all became about highlighting people. Again, people watching. So yeah, it became this really fun experience. Stressful at times, trying to bring everything together that seemed important in a way that sort of made sense. But that was a project where when I'd made it and it was there and I put it down on the table and be like, I've done it, it was like, again, it was one of those just amazing, it was almost like this weird relief that I felt like I'd done something, you've done something justice in a way, and you're like, I'm happy that that's how it is and the world can see it this way. But it was certainly one of those projects where it is all about being sort of human and talking to, getting to know people, talking to people, immersing yourself in it, which I think is something that's just so important that we need to get back to sooner rather than later.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Because you kind of, I know exactly what you're talking about. You go into okay, so first off, it's great to hear that there's been that link through the family where everyone's kind of like worked in the cinema, so they've experienced the cinema. And it's a big thing for me, obviously as well, the cinema, but it's a thing that I always find that even when you're kind of, I suppose you could say the same thing for a concert, or a theatre or something like that. You're all sort of sitting there, unless you're at a concert, especially the concerts I used to go to, you're having a fight by about 10 minutes in. But there's this shared experience, isn't there? There's this sort of there's this shared sort of collective like experience that happens.
Yeah.
And if you're not an arsehole, you're not talking in the cinema. You're kind of like, you're sitting and you might sort of like nudge the person you're with, or sort of like give some expression or lean over and sort of like whisper. But it's interesting that it's one of those weird formats where you're kind of together with your group, you're with your partner or your family, your friend or whatever else. You're not really talking. You're watching and hearing this whole experience, and I always find it interesting. This is why I love the whole like watching a film and then going for a few pints. Something else we're not allowed to do at the moment. To kind of get an appreciation and an understanding from what the person you went with thought of it.
Yeah.
It's like, because you both experienced this in the same place at the same time, like, and you couldn't talk about it. And then you talk about it after, and it's always interesting. Of like, did people get different takes from it?
Yeah,
I find that I find that really kind of like an interesting observation.
I quite like it when you've gone to the pub, you've had a few pints. Did you notice this part? Did you see this? And the other person normally goes, "What? No, I didn't. What? When was that?" And it's like, oh, I've missed it. Had I missed it? And then it's this great thing where if you go watch it again, you make more of a conscious effort maybe to pick up parts that you weren't necessarily noticing before. But it's just certainly like, it just seems like such an amazing experience. Like, to me, I suppose again, it's on those. I think going to cinema for me was one of the things that made me realise that I enjoyed what I enjoyed doing or should do with my life was design, because it was like going to see things like Harry Potter. I was lucky enough to go to Leicester Square with the crew to see Aurora the Phoenix. And what was amazing was to be in that auditorium with someone behind going, mate, the effects you did on that was just brilliant. Like, that was brilliant, the fireworks. And I was like going, this is amazing. Like, it was just something else. But it's one of those things where you then realise, like, oh my God, someone designed the Mulder's map. Oh, someone's designed, everything so well, looked at, thought through. So I think in some ways, one of my appreciations to film is because it made me realise what I like doing as well. So I think that's part of the reason why I feel so like, I think I look at film quite closely, is because it is something where I was like, oh, that's what that's about. Oh, that's quite a cool thing.
And I suppose it does also highlight that kind of like because I know we've both been to Harry Potter. I know you love Harry Potter. It's like, you know, there's no hiding, guys. Izzy is a big fan of Harry Potter, you know. And I went to the Harry Potter world as well, and I know exactly what you mean when you kind of you could see that, and for some people that would have been like a decade of their life, like just living in that world. And I know you spoke to some people recently over a Zoom call, I believe, who were in some way involved in some element of design there, and it's like you could see those ideas start on the page, then start suddenly coming to the screen. And I can't remember where it was. There was one particular part in the Harry Potter experience where they were showing you a lot of the concept drawings, and then there were screens above it, kind of bringing it to life. And I suppose that I hadn't considered that. I suppose that makes sense that you would, because I was trying to figure out, where does film come into this for Izzy? You know, like where's the link here? And now I kind of get that. It's like if you're watching a film like that and knowing that you're a big fan of the Harry Potter franchise, I know what to get you for your birthday next year. That kind of does that kind of makes sense. You know, so we got there. Me trying to ask you three questions at once, and I've forgotten what the third one was. I've got to stop doing that. But I suppose the dissertation, in terms of the physical that's around it, I suppose that I was just astounded that it was a physical. You know, my dissertation was on film sound, but like I say, it's just a. I don't even. I've got it somewhere. It's nothing that's something you can actually keep. And then there's talks with your family. There's talks with like-minded people. You've marked that in time. It's kind of quite special.
Yeah, I then I made a couple, so I then gave like a made piece to the different people that helped me through it. So my gran was very, very delighted when I was like, "Here you are, thank you for your help." Especially because the photo, so this jacket for it, so you can see, is
we can see it. Yeah,
that was the original Odeon that my gran worked at. So that's how she sort of sees the cinema, as one great big, massive space with a balcony, and you know, they'd sell the usherette that she'd sell the ice cream, eat some of it, let defrost, freeze over, and sell it as a whole tub. It's like little stories like that. I think it's just brilliant. You know, the fact that if you were going to buy ice cream yourself as an usherette, you'd get the torch and check that it wasn't the one that you've half eaten already. Like, I think that's just amazing. Brilliant. Like, it's not something you get away with today, unfortunately, but you know, it's those kind of things. I think that's one of the things that's just great about, you know, being creative. You get to like lock into these moments, and it's trying to like keep them alive and keep them going, and sort of try and share that to other people, which I think is just an amazing thing to be able to try and do. But that was a good fun. That was a good fun project.
Like I say, I would love to one day read it. I skimmed through parts of it when you were sort of elated, going, "Look what I've done it," you know. But it's kind of it's weird because that wasn't a final. It's almost like it was your FMP, your final major project. I thought when you showed it to me, I didn't realize that was like your dissertation part.
Yeah.
What was your FMP?
Well, we ended up some of the things about third year. We didn't really get to do a final project. Because it got a bit interrupted with
by the human malware.
This thing that happened. So I ended up trying to keep it sort of closely to what I did my dissertation. So I looked at film posters. So I did like a whole project about how they all look quite similar. So this was like, I ended up making another publication. So that was like the front. And then the back, and it was the whole idea was that it looked like almost the same, but slightly different. Like, I'm sure you've seen film posters where you're like, hang on a second, I swear that was up a few years ago, but it's a completely different film, same genre, sure, but different. So I ended up doing it. It was a project that I ended up sort of liking, sort of not, because it was sort of made in a very weird time, I guess, just being when we were all in lockdown, stuck at home. And I think I had about 5 film posters with me, and I was a bit like, how am I supposed to now do this? Sure. So unfortunately, I feel like the final major project didn't, to me, I don't feel like it really necessarily happened for my degree as such. But I suppose it's probably one of the reasons why I ended up going to town with my dissertation publication, because that was something which to me had more legs and more meaning behind it.
Well, I think it. I think it. When I saw it, I literally thought that was your final major project, And so I think you're right. I think it. I mean, look, it breaks my heart to hear people saying this, that they're paying all this money, And I've spoken to a lot of people who are studying now, I don't want to turn this into a. If anyone wants to hear my views on COVID, watch the podcast I did yesterday. But like the fact that people are saying that, and for me in my third year, because I'm quite secretive when I'm creative. I like being on my own. I don't. It's like get out, Unless I really. It takes a long time for me to build up that trust to have someone actually sit there with me.
Yeah.
So I was kind of at home anyway in my third year, but I can see how if you needed access to like printers, or if you needed access to to go somewhere to look at archived bits of old posters and things like that, it's going to be a problem. So I'm sad to hear that you felt that like about your third year, but I would say post uni you did do Fluffy, which is a short film, right? And I love that poster. I think that's awesome. Like I think it's really cool. So I feel like you kind of first let's tell us about it. How did that come about?
So I have it was someone I knew from high school. We're quite good friends, still in touch. Well, say we're quite good friends. We talk more or less every day, kind of thing. And it was suddenly one of those moments where she turned around and went, you're a graphic designer. You're quite good. I'm working on a film project at the moment, and we don't have anyone to design the posters. Like, would you be up for doing it? So I was like, absolutely. I've got nothing to do now. I've finished uni. My hand in online is done. So absolutely, let's go for it. So it was really good fun. And it felt like to me, it felt like a really nice way to sort of been like, I've now done uni and now I've done my own project, with some input from them about what they wanted and how they wanted to look. But it was really nice to almost have this project where no one was telling me that's good, that's bad, I like this, I don't like that. And then to be like, oh, I've produced something which looks to me, I'm quite happy with it. They're happy with it. So it was almost like a nice sort of like confidence boost after uni, especially in such a weird way of finishing where, you're stuck in your room trying to create work. And it was like, oh, I can do this. So that was a really fun project. And then that was the other thing that's quite interesting, was working out how to get inspiration when you can't go anywhere. So it became a lot of books, a lot of book buying, a lot of like making your own library of references, which I absolutely am not complaining about. So I suppose that's one thing about being creative. You always find a way around these things.
And that was one of the questions which you touched on, was like, do you ever get the creative burnout or the writer's block, if you like, and how you kind of combat that? Because I think a lot of creative people are interested in how other people deal with that.
Yeah.
You've kind of answered it, but I mean, like, is there anything what's Izzy sort of like? I need to get out this. I need to develop.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's one thing that again sort of happened because of Fluffy was it was, how do I do this now? I can't, you start a project and you normally start by going off somewhere to look at either random exhibition in London to get like just to sort of refresh your mind, as it were, what you could do. And then it was like, well, I can't do that, and I can't leave this space I'm in. So in lockdown, it was like, right, what can I do? I can buy books, and I can watch stuff on Netflix, on Prime, on Apple, whatever it was. And there are some good, interesting programs on Netflix. There's one called Abstract on Netflix, and that's a whole sort of different disciplines, which is quite interesting. So in lockdown, it was a case of buy books, watch stuff, try and look at online archives. But normally, in the real world, it's where can I go? What can I look at? Or it's just, I'm going to go up to London and I'm going to have a walk around, maybe somewhere different part I've not been. Like, it's all that kind of like go somewhere, almost escape from what you're doing and take in what's around you. And it can be quite amazing what you maybe discover, which, you know, if you're not really looking, can be quite inspiring. So I'd say, yeah, it's a combination of get out of the space that you're stuck in and try and work through it. And being persistent, again, is another big thing.
I think it's good advice, really. I think we all do that, don't we? We kind of sit there, and it's almost like if you've been just like screaming at yourself in some sort of frenzy for the past hour, just get out of the room.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn that. I'd sit there for like hours and you're just not getting anywhere. So that's really good advice. To basically get out and try and look. While you're looking, think of a way out of it. Okay, that's really cool. That's so. Would you do that like during I know you're still trying to establish like some sort of routine for your work, but would you say you take breaks and go for a walk around the block, or you know, do you kind of do that in your workflow, or do you tend to just get completely into it?
I think it depends how the work's going. So if it feels like you're on a roll, I'll just carry on and carry on and carry on until I'm very tired and I'm not, suddenly the roll's not going as fast as it was. Then that's called bedtime. But if I'm sort of stop starting, that's normally like meet up with some friends, have a chat. It's almost like switch off. And when you're switching off, sometimes you find your best ideas happen when you're not really conscious of it. There's been a few times where I've been out and I'm like, oh, guys, one sec, and I'll just get my phone. I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, we're all good. Carry on. What were you saying? That was quite a fun moment. And then suddenly you're enjoying your pint a lot more than you were before. But yeah, no, at the moment, my breaks are probably more like I'll walk up and down the garden. So I'm fortunate that I've got a nice sized garden where I can sort of take 10 minutes and up and down, back in, have a cup of coffee, try again. And if that try again point and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, then I'll go, right, today's not the day, park it to one side. If there's another project, maybe try the other project I've got going, or just call it a day and do something else, maybe drawing by that point.
Which would then be a relaxing thing for you.
Yeah.
So that would make it that way. And you might even, I suppose that could be a way as well, is that if you then started drawing something, it might even throw you straight, you get inspired from doing that and it throw you into, you work out the problem from the drawing.
Yeah.
So I think it's like we said earlier, it is just what worked before, okay, well, let's try that again. It's trying to kind of tie these dots up of your workflow. But just, I mean, to finish off on Fluffy, I am glad that I mean, I thought it looked great. I really, really thought it looked awesome. I suppose it's kind of, I think this will lead us in quite well to sort of typography I wanted to ask you about and things like that. I'm glad that you knowing now that you felt your final major project was quite like a little bit not quite what you had kind of hoped for. I suppose it's good that one of your first real world projects was a film poster that was good, because I honestly thought it was really good, and they got the film did get some acclaim, didn't it, when it went into a festival, or it's kind of it's doing the rounds as well.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of doing the rounds. It's got a few different. I think it's got a few awards. If not, I think it should have got a few awards. So yeah, no, it's now sort of on the rounds. Went to a few film festivals, and it was really nice to see that then other sort of social media accounts were then obviously using the poster to sort of advertise it, which was that's probably the first time I think like that sort of happened for me anyway. So that was like, oh my god, this is so cool.
That's mine. I did that.
So yeah, that was really nice. That was a really nice little moment. And again, it was really nice timing that it happened after I'd done my online hand-in.
No, I'm glad, because because I would have felt sad, I would have sat there and thought, Izzy didn't get, because I'm like that, so I'm glad, I'm glad knowing that, and then you did the film, the movie post. I mean, is it something you kind of would I suppose this is a little bit of a weird question because I kind of already know the answer, but nobody else does, which is why we're asking it. But like typography, I think you like typography, right? I gather that seems to be a theme that comes up in your work a lot from going through your website.
Yeah,
and that seems to be digital as well. It seems to be, you're focused on sort of typography digitally because you want to get into digital publication, which makes perfect sense. How do you go about, because this is another thing that my brain can't deal with, and that's font lists.
Yeah.
I just can't deal with it. There's too many in the list. What do you do with, like, is it you design your own? You just search like hell till you find something that works?
Again, it sort of depends on the project. So sometimes I'm like, if types, normally type's important in whatever you're doing. So it's finding the typeface that has the right tone and it reflects what you're doing. So sometimes I'll have in my mind, like it's weird. You start building up a bank in your mind of different things that might look good or might not look good. And then I'll have a big long list and I'll just go through every single one of them. And I'll normally print off, if it's going to be a print project, then I'll print it off and I'll have a look and I'll lay them all out and try and work it out. And normally by that way, you can sort of go, yeah, no, you're awful, you're good, maybe, not so sure. And then normally I'd get my friends at uni and be like, which one? Yes, no, let's get some opinions from other people. And then sometimes, like the fluffy poster, there's not one that works. So that was all done on my iPad. I found a really nice brush it was on Procreate, and I just went around and I just did everything the way I wanted. And because, again, like the project like Fluffy, where it is sort of a more of an artsy film post that reflects the film, it didn't make sense to have a perfect typeface. It made sense that if I do it all by hand, then we're going to have slight irregularities, but in a way that complements what it's for. So it's one of those really weird things where, well, it's not weird, I suppose it sort of depends upon the project. And then sometimes you get lucky and you can find one pre-made that works. Sometimes you don't, and then you've got a bit of a, well, what is it that I want? What is it that works? And then that's when you tend to go down the whole, can I make something that's relevant to this? And then how is it going to be relevant? What is it that's going to be different from what I've got that's not right?
It makes sense. Well, because it was really original, the font on that. Like I had never seen anything like that, and now we find out that's because you created it. And I gather that Procreate is I remember again when the Apple Pencil came out. That is, I gather, one of the go-to applications on the iPad. I'm gathering for such a thing.
Yeah, no, because that was something which even Adobe didn't really have worked out. It's only in the very last couple of months they've started doing Photoshop and Illustrator for the iPad, they're both very good apps, but they don't quite have the freedom necessarily that Procreate has at the moment. And I'm sure in time Adobe will hack into that and I'll spend even more money. But
it's likely.
But Procreate has done me proud so far. And it is quite a good tool in the sense it is so open and freeing. In some ways, there's not many restrictions, which is equally great and equally not so great. There can be times when it's like, I want it to do this, and you're doing its own thing. And then I'm a bit like, I could just lob my iPad out the window right now with frustration.
I think we've all been there like that. Why isn't there a button there? I want the button there. So it's okay. So it's interesting. So basically, from trying to break it down, it's almost like for some projects, I suppose I gather contact sheet is the correct term. You could do a bunch of logos, put them on a contact sheet, and sort of like which one, get some opinions or talk to a client and kind of work it out, or even work it out yourself.
Yeah.
And if you really can't get there, it's like, did you do the similar thing for Fluffy where you also did a contact sheet, or was it like, no, this is the font I'm going with, I'm just going to draw it and that's...
So
or did you do a few versions?
I did quite a few versions. I had a few different ideas for how I wanted the poster, or how the poster could look. So I ended up being like, right, I'm sorry guys, I'm going to bombard you, but here you are. Is there anything you particularly like, don't like, works, don't work? So I did a whole like traditional, well, more of a classic film poster look, condensed type for all the credits. They had their own fluffy title within the film, which I pulled out for one of them to use for the poster. But even in the poster format, for the sort of look they wanted, it wasn't working. So I did a little taster, like, well, what if I did something like this? Which I knew would take a long time. And I was like, I know it would look really good if I do it this way, but let's see what they think of the other options. Sure enough, they came back, we like what you've done here. Can you do more of that? And I was like, yep, bye-bye 2 days of my life. But it was so worth it.
I suppose that's the thing as well, is if you, and I suppose in many ways I kind of did it to you when I got some stuff for you, asked you to do some things for the YouTube, because it's like, here's the font I've been using, and then after I sent that, I thought, okay, all right, it's different, I suppose, for AEPL because it is a company and I'm trying to keep it like the same. But I was like, that's like a director giving me a film with a temp track in it, like a musical temp track. It's like, I suppose again the answer is probably going to be, without trying to put words in your mouth, it depends on the project. But do you find that sometimes you're given like, oh, so this is the font we're using, and then you're just kind of like restricted creatively and you have to work around that?
I'd always say no, because someone might do that to me. It's sort of a bit like fluffy in some ways, where it's like, oh, we've got this pre-used, and I'll look at it and I might be like, I'm not so sure, but let's give it a go. And so my approach to these kind of things is I'll use what they've given me, but I'm also going to show them something that they may not necessarily thought of and I think might be better. So sometimes maybe it comes across a bit pushy, being like, well, have you thought of it this way? But sometimes it tends to be the sort of missing link or something that maybe they've not thought of. So
I think it's perfect, absolutely a perfect answer, because I think we all do that. It's like it'd be easy if we, because a lot of people, I think, when they're hiring you to do something, they don't really know. They've got like a concept idea, but because they're not in that practice or in that discipline, they have no idea what they want. And in some ways, I think that's part of hiring. That's part of actually hiring a creative and saying, look, I've kind of got this idea. Care?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got to be aware of that. It's like, because that you're putting this idea forward, and in the back of your mind, you're like, I've just opened up a rabbit hole. That's going to be the next 4, 5, 6 nights of my life now, trying to do this when I could have just stuck with it. But I think that's part of being like a dedicated to your craft. Basically, it's like, what can I do here to open this up?
Yeah, and I think as well, it's sort of, we get like that gut feeling of, I can't do this project and not show you this idea, or like at least give you this option, because I feel like I wouldn't be doing essentially my job. Of opening up all the doors that you may not have thought about, and then you got Pandora's box and you're in too deep to get out.
It's a thing. I think that's welcome to the world of being a creative. I suppose that's the thing. So, are you looking to kind of do more film stuff, do more posters, and more of that sort of thing, or are you focused in a particular area right now of development? And
I think because of how my course has been, like my uni course at Kingston was so like diverse and nothing was ever the same, that I'd say I'm in this position where I'm a bit like I could almost go in any direction in a weird way. I'd really enjoyed doing the film poster, and I'd happily do more that kind of stuff. Like I'd happily do more about publications, but equally I did a project right at the end called Flipper, where suddenly I got to use Adobe Xd, and it was creating an app for phone. So that is something which I was like, damn, if only I discovered this like earlier, I could have maybe done a bit more and get to explore it more. So I feel like I've got a bit of an itch I want to scratch now. So I've got a few ideas for like different app projects I might want to try and look at. So that might be something I do a bit in January.
Adobe Xd. I haven't. What is the? I've not heard of it. What is
So
Adobe Xd?
Adobe XD is essentially like a way to design anything sort of digital. So websites, applications, banners, anything for any device. So it could be, for your phone, for your iPad, for a massive desktop screen, tiny screen. It's quite a new app, and it's like constantly getting updated. But it's definitely a very interesting one because it's a lot more user friendly for a digital outcome, which I found really easy to pick up, a lot easier than other Adobe softwares. So
Interesting.
It's something that I'm definitely more interested in exploring now.
Interesting, because you've just taken us right there, because I've got it. What the future of design in our tech dominated world. And I've got here about app concepts with Flipper, like and even using everyday utilities. Like I know you had like a railway ticket that could segue people into the app.
Yeah.
And you could see all these sorts of things. So you've taken us to the next question, which is kind of like, and I didn't know that they'd done that. That's really interesting. So I gather it almost bridges the entire suite in that way of thinking, does it? Like it kind of like, because I know Flash has gone from the web.
Yeah.
I'm a complete layman with a lot of this stuff. I kind of know, and then HTML5 was a big thing, and like it's almost like, is there almost going to become like a standardized design now that will work on web, work on app? Is that kind of what this is trying to do? It's like you build your idea and then push it out there to whatever it can be.
Yeah. So it's in some ways it's almost not that intelligent yet, because it is certainly something that you can see Adobe are constantly going every other day. Here's an update for you. But you can sort of it's a really good way to just get some initial ideas down for how something could work and flow. So what was amazing with me, because I don't know code, I know very about that much, and it's not anything to get you anywhere. But it's one of those apps where you can just be like, I want it to look this way, and I want it to go from this page to that page with this animation, and it'll sort of do it for you. And it's designed so you could then send that file across to someone else. So say I'm designing an app for you, I'd then send you across a file and you could open it and it'd be like the iPhone on your screen, and you just click on different buttons and it would direct you to the app. So you get a whole feel for how the app or website, how it would work. And then you go, yes, no, I like this, I don't like that. And then the idea is to send it off to a group of people that can then code it and make it a real thing. So it's a really nice piece of software.
That is fascinating because and it's really powerful for you, because that gives someone, again, if someone wanted an app, it's like, how does it work? What's it gonna look like? How's it gonna function? So they've given you the tools to almost mock this up.
Yeah.
You can actually give it to a client and say, we'll play with it over the weekend and let me know.
Yeah.
And they can say, I didn't like the way it flipped back from there, and this graphic was a bit weird, and blah blah. Whereas as opposed to you trying to like get I don't know, like storyboard this app usage, app use cases, which is just not going to work. So that is quite exciting. That is quite I would say learn as much about that as you possibly can. Maybe we should edit this part out of the podcast. No, we don't do edits on AuroraCast. But so do you think that's, one thing that I wanted to link back to Fluffy as well, because Fluffy still had, by the way, guys, if you go onto Izzy's website, all this stuff is like, you can get, it's a very well designed website, you can get to all these projects really well and it tells you all about them. But Fluffy had almost like had an app which was what you wanted to get to.
Flipper.
But you had for Flip. What did I just say?
Fluffy.
Flipper. Sorry, brain box. I didn't have a coffee. Or maybe I've had too many. Either way.
No, not enough. Not enough.
It's always your thing. You made me break my 10-day abstinence from coffee, didn't you?
Yep. I don't think it's healthy. When you're a caffeine addict, you don't stop.
Okay, right. Well, okay. But yeah, Flipper has. So it had. I liked the concept that you still use like a tangible, actual physical item, which people could sort of swap and And like instead of this train ticket just going in the bin, it's actually got like, oh, this is quite cool. Let's look at the app.
Yeah.
Let's get to the app. I suppose the question, in a way, given the way this conversation's kind of gone, is I suppose we know the answer, but do you think that we're going to end up, is there any room now for kind of physical publications anymore? Do you think we're going just completely digital?
I think I would love to think, this might just be my own personal love for physicality and for books, that I think we'll have more designed specialist pieces of publication, which were probably more, they'd like to be more of an experience, and they wouldn't just be a book in some ways. But I definitely think that whatever you're going to do, and I think most future designers, you're going to have to have knowledge and experience in design digitally. It's like very recently, this whole the whole UI UX designer role is essentially just being a digital graphic designer for the modern world. So I think that we're definitely heading in more of a digital format, because everyone's got a phone, everyone's obsessed. No person, I feel, under a certain age goes a day without touching their phone. So it's something which you're going to have to be conscious of and not fall behind in. But equally, I think that there will still always be an appreciation for something physical. I'd like to hope.
I think you're right, but I'm kind of divided on this, because I agree with you. I think you've got to be aware of it. But, I love audiobooks. But then there's some books that I think don't work in the audio format. You need to have them physically. And magazines, I can remember I used to buy Sound on Sound religiously and sort of read through it, and I had stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines, and in the end they sort of burden you, end up getting rid of them. So I kind of am not. The Sound on Sound magazine, when it first went to the iPad, it was almost better because you could tap and zoom into sessions, and had interactive content and things like that. But I suppose what I'm thinking of is like, obviously CD covers, vinyls, which unfortunately breaks my heart, don't exist really anymore. They're kind of still there in the vinyl world, but it's things like, how do you think can you see almost like a solution, I suppose, to this problem, or perhaps it's something to think about? Like every concert I go to, especially if it's like Ennio Morricone or Hans Zimmer or like a film music set, or like the Proms or whatever, I keep I'll buy the program, even if it's £15, I'll buy the damn thing. I'll whinge about it, but I'll buy it. And then I've got a little stack, and of like all the concerts I've seen and whatever else. It's that kind of publication, I think, or publications like you've done for your dissertation. I don't, especially with that, because it's so personal for you. I think the fact it's actually physical and you can hold it, it's got a value to it. And I'm not sure how. I don't know what I'm trying to say, really. It's like, how would they do that? Like, is there going to be some sort of service where you can buy a program and then sort of keep it somehow within an app?
See, that's the thing. That's where I'd love to think that maybe it's just me being a bit old-fashioned, where there's still we're all human, and we like having a physical object item to hold and look back, and it's almost like a memory in itself. It contains that concert experience. It contains, I don't know, the football match you watched, whatever it is. Like it's got that, like, I don't know, importance. It's that connection to something that you went out, you did, you enjoyed, and you want to keep it. And I feel like you're not going to get that in an app. Not currently, the way our technology currently is. Maybe 50 years time, where your phone can print off the publication there and then. I don't know. Maybe that then it might change, but I certainly think currently technology isn't in a place where we can just do that.
It's almost like I personally, I don't know your thoughts on this, but I almost feel like we've reached this point where where I kind of feel like the human element of it's disappearing, and it's kind of a concern for me. I kind of feel like the tech world wants to keep going like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, we're not robots. Like, I think I want to own things and I want to pick up. I mean, back in the day, we used to get my paycheck and I'd spend the whole thing on like vinyls or CDs, and all my mates we'd just pass the CD cover around. Where was it mixed? Who produced it? Like, and now you just go on Spotify and sort of quick click play. I don't know. It's like I'm trying not to be negative about it. I'm trying to find a solution.
Yeah.
To this problem, and then that's what interested me with Flipper, because it's like it's still kind of. I know probably the concept was we want people on this app, and probably train tickets are going to disappear. Well, if anyone can ever even get on a train ever again, but like. I suppose just that. I suppose you just think that. Well, we need to kind of see. I suppose is that your take on it? You're not.
Yeah, I think we're going to have more of a link between physical items and digital. So I think that's partly what I was trying to do with Flipper, was like, what's an everyday item ish currently that you can still use and appreciate that could maybe link somehow digitally? Like, is there a way you can make more of a hybrid physical publication that's digital at the same time? Like different ways like that, where maybe a program that was like 100 pages, because it's a hybrid and it's got digital elements that you could use, like you bring your phone into it somehow, it reduced it down to like 5 pages. I don't know, something. So then it's almost like, something which would have been a lot bigger physically takes up less space, but it still holds that connection for the person. I think that could be a neater solution in some ways, because you're not completely losing the physical element, but you still got something which you could put on your shelf and you can look at and be a nice reminder. I think that would be a very sad day when you don't have a shelf where you can put your concert program up.
I'm saying nothing. but it's I know in the music world it's been interesting. I've seen recently a drummer showed me this concept where people have made it. Here, my microphone. I need to stop doing this. Like, people have made a cassette, like an old school cassette, but it's not got any tape in it. In the bottom of it, there's a USB stick which has got the music on it. I thought that was really cool. AC/DC, you should look at it as a graphic designer. Go on Instagram, go to AC/DC, and look at the merch they've done for their 2020 release. It's quite a case study.
Oh, we're having a look at a bit then.
It's quite a case. It's like now AC/DC are always going to do well, right? They're an old school rock band. The demographics all over the place, but the products they've made and the way they've done their marketing campaign, it's like I'm looking at it a lot.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is an interesting model. And they've done things like you can buy a little speaker. It's got AC/DC on it and it lights up, and you press a button and it plays like the opening riff to a song. And then somehow from buying that speaker, you also get the album, which is kind of linked to what you were saying. So I'm probably going to buy one. I want to put an AC/DC thing on my shelf, right? I mean, I think it's interesting, and I think it's kind of like, I mean, that thing you told me was it Adobe Xd?
Xd, yeah.
Xd. That sounds really cool, and it sounds like there could be something to do there. But I suppose my hope for the future to designers is like, please keep some sort of a physical element to it.
Yeah.
So what does design mean to you?
Oh, I think that ultimately it's about communicating a message and trying to achieve a connection with the audience that you're trying to reach. You're trying to keep it as simple and as summarized as possible. And you can interpret that any way you want.
I think that's a perfect answer, and I think it comes from the heart, which I like. The future of Miss Swan. Are you working on anything at the moment you wanted to tell us about, and what's your hopes for the future?
Well, I told you this earlier. I very recently found that there's a competition brief going on at the moment. It's about rebranding Narnia. So I'll give you a sneak peek. That's something I literally did yesterday. So that's a little short-term project going on at the moment. And then after that, I've got a few personal project ideas I'd like to maybe try and work on a bit. But ultimately, hopefully, get a job in design, which keeps me going, but it's something that I really enjoy doing.
That's all you can hope for, isn't it? That's all you can. The Narnia thing looks great. I loved Narnia as a kid. I did. I loved it. And recently we went to. I didn't even know it existed, even though it's down the road from me. Like the Narnia Wood in Banstead. Is it Banstead Woods? There's actually got the wardrobe there and everything.
I did not know this.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. I think that's where it's Banstead Wood. They've got the Narnia Trail.
I'll be having a look.
And, there's the wardrobe and like all this sorts of stuff there. Maybe that can be a I don't know. You can go and have a business meeting there, or I don't know. Are you allowed to go for a walk in the park? I'm not actually sure at the moment. I think you're allowed to go for some exercise, so you could go there for a walk. Well, it's a walk anyway. It's a trail, but that would definitely give you some inspiration. I feel, and it sounds really cool.
Definitely.
It sounds like a really cool thing. So it's just literally just obviously you've got a month off now, pretty much, or a month away from the day job. Have you got any kind of like you been doing anything on your website, or kind of just focusing on?
No, I'm hopefully going to be trying to add a bit more detail to my website, because for me it feels like it's a bit of a shell, and it's got a rough outline of stuff that I've done, but there's definitely more detail needed. So it's going through adding a bit of detail to the website, maybe adding a bit more about the projects I've done, which aren't so obvious on there at the moment. So it's all that kind of organisation in some ways I think needs to be done at the moment, and looking back and improving on stuff that I've not had a chance to do yet. So that's sort of my plan for the next month and a bit.
I shall be following it closely. I shall be following it very closely. I think, like I said earlier, I do think the website is good. I think it looks great. I love the way you can click into it and it shows you more of the project. And I saw as well that there is a PDF available on request for Izzy's work.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's way more to add there. So where can we find you? I suppose is because I keep saying check out Izzy's website. I haven't actually said the URL.
So it's isabelleswan.co.uk, and it's the French spelling for Isabelle, so it's the longest way possible.
We love it. And Instagram as well.
Yeah.
I
got I think it's at design_swan, something like that. But they're all sort of linked in on the bio as well.
I will link everything down on the bottom of the page to find it easy to find. I'm not going to try and keep you too much longer because it's Christmas Eve and I'm sure you want to get back to seeing your family and relaxing. But did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No. Just have a good time off yourself.
I will try, mate. I will try. I'm sure I'll get up to some stuff myself. I'm sure we'll be flinging some text back and forth. And best of luck with the Narnia stuff. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me. It's been lovely to speak to you. See your face.
Lovely speaking to you too, Mike.
Perfect. I'll see you in another life when we're both cats or something, or
maybe next year, maybe the year after. Who knows?
Seems like conversations may be sort of restricted to Skype for the time being. Perfect. Take care, mate. I will see you real soon. Yeah.
Thank you, and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.